Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. My name's Mike and thank you for clicking on this video. Yeah, that time has come once again of the year where I talk about the top 10 worst movies of 2022, and I'm going to try to do this without getting too stressed or annoyed, but I can guarantee you one thing. When I get to my number one pick, expect a rant and a kind of full review on that movie. And we'll get to it because it's been a long time coming. And I want to hear your opinion down below in the comment section. So leave any and all comments about a worst movie you've got or your top 10. Let's go into a couple of quick honourable mentions because I've got plenty. But I'm just going to whittle this down to 2 or 3. One of them is See How They Run with Saoirse Ronan and Sam Rockwell. Utterly boring movie which put me generally to sleep. Bodies, bodies, bodies. Now, I know a lot of people are going on about like, oh, this is like a Gen Z kind of horror comedy meta kind of movie it's going for. That might be cool, that might be what it's going for, but did not work for me at all. By the time that this movie finished, I was annoyed and I was like, I really sat through this rubbish and experienced it? Yeah, without further ado, let's just get to my top 10. Directed by Roland Emmerich, which came out in January of 2022, and that is Moonfall. And oh boy, this movie is a stinker. It really is. I know it's kind of like a disaster movie, and I know it's one of those kind of movies where it tries to not take itself too seriously, but then it does kind of try to take itself too seriously. Then it tries to have like a really clever, unique twist and plot to it, and it just doesn't work whatsoever. I remember leaving this movie and thinking, this has got to be one of the worst movies I've seen, and yeah, long behold, 12 months has pretty much come around, and I feel the exact same way. Number 9 is a screener that I received from Shudder. Dark Glasses is essentially around a horror movie which is directed by Dario Argento, who's mainly known as like an Italian horror master director of sorts. This is the first movie I've ever seen, so I can't comment on that. Definitely budget issues here. Some of the effects here are laughable, but the whole worst point of this movie is the plot and the actual story. So basically it's around this guy who's going around killing prostitutes in Italy. So we focus on our main character who is a prostitute, and essentially this guy comes over to, do his business or whatever, and this woman says to him purely, no, like, you stink, go get a shower. So he goes to take a free shower in her house, and then he leaves in an absolute fit of rage, not wanting to carry on the kind of service he was going to pay for, and like, no, like, how dare you insult me? And the rest of this movie is basically him going around trying to kill this woman because she told him he stinks. So I'm always grateful to get these screeners, by the way, and I love them, and I'm always hoping for a hidden gem in the kind of landmines of bad movies as such, but this unfortunately falls under a bad movie, and it is called What Josiah Saw, or what he didn't bloody see at this point. It stars Robert Patrick, who you may know as in Terminator 2. He gives a good performance. He's definitely the best part of this movie, but you've got a lot of incest going on here. You've got like pretty much 2 hours of just waffle dialogue, boring, nothing interesting happening. You're thinking, okay, well, what's Josiah going to see? And he pretty much sees absolutely nothing in this movie. Absolutely one of the worst movies I've seen this year. I definitely can't recommend this one. Alright, I'm trying to keep calm. So at number 7 here, we've got a movie that I saw the original movie only like a day or two before checking out its sequel. It's a long-awaited sequel, came on Disney Plus, and that is Hawkins Pocus 2. So I'd never seen the first movie until this year, until a couple of days before checking out this new movie. Really enjoyed the original movie. I thought it was kind of like just a cheesy 90s fun that was a little bit more kind of serious and maybe a bit more like edgy for like Disney product at the time. You wouldn't get that nowadays. And this sequel is just an absolute cash grab. It's, don't get me wrong, like, the Three Witches are good, they're definitely just the good aspect of it, but like the Friends storyline here is just weak. A lot of the characters are forgetting around, even our main kind of core group girls forgetting around. They've pretty much got like no motivation and no story to tell. Chemistry wasn't really there. There's a lot of stuff where they try to just incorporate a lot of like product placement, like Walgreens and stuff, and I'm just like, why do we really need Walgreens in Hocus Pocus universe? Absolutely terrible. And what makes it worse is they're trying to set up for another movie, and I really hope that we don't get a Hocus Pocus 3. I can certainly admire the background of this, where Sean C. Phillips got a funding together to make a movie, because, you know, maybe he couldn't afford to make it himself, whatever. He had a passion project to make this movie, and again, I can respect that. At the end of the day, you've all got to start somewhere, and being a chance to make your own movies, I can only imagine, would be an incredible feat. However, this movie is absolutely hot garbage, to the point where I was like, who invests money into this absolutely worthless piece of trash you'll ever see? And that is Amityville Karen. Please, some movie studio or something, buy the rights to the Amityville property, because I mean, this is like a public domain, and this is why we're getting like Amityville Karen, Amityville Turkey, or whatever that other movie is. I haven't seen it, but don't get me wrong, guys. You know me on this channel. I love it so bad. It's good movie. And, you know, I've seen plenty of Asylum ones. I cover them a lot on the channel. You guys know I love those kind of movies, but this one was just flat out bad. I mean, you've got a point where our main character, Karen, played by Lauren Francesca, she literally puts some guy's head into the pool for 1 second, in terms of like this, you know, like those famous kind of like drowning scenes, they'll hold their heads under the water or whatever. She literally does it for 1 second, guys. I'm not kidding you. 1 second. Then it's just a clear camera cut, and then the guy's floating away like that, acting dead. And I couldn't take it seriously. I was like, wow, who's funding? Who's giving this guy like $85,000 or whatever it was to make this absolutely worthless piece of junk? Number 5 is a movie where the main actress was pretty much sexually exploited for a fictional tale about Marilyn Monroe, and that is called Blonde. I knew absolutely zero about Marilyn Monroe before this movie, and after watching the movie, I still know absolutely nothing about this woman. I believe afterwards it was kind of based on a fictionalized book or whatever, but in this adaptation, it's on for nearly 3 hours on Netflix. The trailer looked fantastic. I was like, wow, I'm intrigued, I'm sold. I'm like, what are they going to do with this movie? For 3 hours, they pretty much just have Anna de Armas topless multiple times. It just comes to a point where I was like, why have we got this woman topless? Like, there's just absolutely no need. We've got like threesomes happening here. We've got things where we're getting like really graphic, like sexual scenes. We've got this bloody adoption kind of like scan of a baby, of like a CG 3D imprint baby thing, and I'm like, what is truly going on with this movie? This is absolutely appalling. Number 4 is an independent movie I got sent an early screener for, and that is Reed's Point, which is a very low budget indie movie based on the Jersey Devil, I believe, from what I remember of the movie. I've only seen it once, and that was enough for me. Yeah, this movie, bad acting all around, bad green screen CG effects here, and this whole kind of like mythology about like the Jersey Devil or whatever it is that they were focusing on in this like kind of hour and a half movie. The Jersey Devil itself is like shown for like 10 minutes maximum. This was just an absolute disaster of a movie. I've got an interesting story to share with this one, so definitely one of the worst movies I've seen this year by far. Got a great cast of like Christian Bale, John David Washington, Margot Robbie, Rami Malek, Anya Taylor-Joy, Robert De Niro, just to name a couple of people in this movie, and that is Amsterdam. So basically, the story I've got to share with this, and this is the first time I'm sharing the story, is I went to the cinema to see this movie, and there's maybe about 5-6 people in total in this cinema. So I was watching the movie. I was intrigued. Firstly, I was like, wow, this is an all-star stellar cast here. It's like, Christian Bale's fantastic. I love him. He's one of my favorite actors. I was like, okay, I'm curious as to where this movie's going to go. And kind of like when the first kind of like 20-30 minutes, I was like on board. I was like, okay, cool. This, you know, seems good. And yeah, after that, I was checked out completely. But one of the stories kind of here, what was kind of funny at the time, I was worried, but it's kind of funny to look back on now, is I was sat in the back row, and in the front, kind of like row in front of me, was kind of like a teenage girl and her dad, I believe it was. And kind of throughout at one point in the movie, the teenage girl kind of like was like looking over to me, but at the same time, I was looking over to her like this, and I could kind of see like she was like shaking her dad, and she was like very concerned. She's like, like she was like, dad, and this guy wasn't moving, and then when she turned to me, she's like, can you get help? Like, she was frantic, and I was like, just what the heck's going on? So I ran out the cinema, and I went to grab the cinema employee and said, like, look, I think there's been like some kind of accident or something in this screening. Like, this guy's just not moving. Like, can you get some like first aid or the medical attention immediately? And what happened is I went back into the screening. The guy was awake. Basically, he was just flat out asleep. That was just brilliant, you know. And that goes to show how bad this movie was. The guy was asleep to the point where he was completely out of it, asleep. That's how good Amsterdam is. Terrible movie. So at number 2, this movie could have multiple titles. Could be, for example, not entertaining at all, snores and all, Borefest and all. This movie shouldn't exist at all, but it's called Bones and All. Yeah, this movie's terrible, guys. This was an absolute borefest, and I was pretty much falling asleep in this movie. It tries to do this like really kind of romantic based kind of movie, and then it has like this kind of side plot of like cannibalism at the main helm, and I'm just like, this movie was utter trash. It really was. Like 2 hours or 2 and a bit hours this movie was, and I was like constantly, what? Snores and All is definitely the more appropriate title. This is just an absolute stinker, guys. I generally can't recommend this movie. Right, and we finally got to number 1. Now, this is a movie. Now, if you've been kind of following my live streams and Instagram socials and like Letterboxd, for example, you'll know exactly what this movie is. And it is the one where I posted on Instagram a while ago saying, would you guys like to kind of hear a rant about this review? The vote majority was a massive majority saying yes. I didn't have time, unfortunately, to make the video, but I'm doing it right now. My number 1 worst movie of 2022 is directed by John Michael Madonna. It stars Ralph Fiennes, Jessica Chastain, and Matt Smith. It's on for an hour and 57 minutes, too long of a runtime, and it's called The Forgiven. Alright, so just to give you guys a bit of context about this movie, I went into it, I think I saw the trailer like once. I can't really say that I was like too sold on the movie or anything, but I'm a huge fan of Jessica Chastain. I like that she is a very just like a strong, independent woman. She stands up for what she believes in and what she wants to believe in, which I can only kind of like respect about anyone for that matter. And I just think she's an absolutely fantastic actress. And Ralph Fiennes is a great actor too. Matt Smith, I've never really seen in anything, but I know he's kind of been helmed as like a good actor. So I was intrigued going into this movie. Now, after checking this out, guys, oh man, I left this movie pissed. I really, really did. And this is just one of those movies where I hated every moment of this. There's just no plot here at all. And the plot it does try to have, does not pay off whatsoever. So I'm going to full spoilers right now. So basically what happens is Jessica Chastain and Ralph Fiennes are a married couple. They are a married couple who are going into this kind of like big fancy house in Morocco, I believe this movie is based, which this house is owned by Matt Smith. Now, they're traveling to this house. This boy pretty much stops in the middle of the road trying to sell Ray Fiennes' character like some kind of item or whatever, or he runs out into the middle of the road, and before he could try sell that said item as such, because that's his kind of like livelihood, Ray Fiennes' character runs him over. So Jessica Chastain's absolutely worried. She's like we've just hit this boy, and they kind of like seem like very distressed and stuff like that. Ultimately, this boy ends up dying. So you think, like, wow, there's going to be some really big consequences here immediately. And I was like, okay, well, this is kind of like an interesting start to a movie. Alright, cool, let's see what goes on and happens. Anyway, they get to Matt Smith's house, and Matt Smith's like, don't worry, we'll call the police, we'll get this all sorted, we'll say it was an accident. So the police comes to pretty much say, oh, look, it was an accident. You know, these teenage boys run out on the road quite a lot, they do this quite a lot. So again, you're like, okay, cool. So then the next morning, the boy's father, who lives like absolutely miles and miles and miles away, finds out about his son's death and comes to the villa of where Jessica Chastain and Ralph Fiennes are staying, and pretty much says to Ray Fiennes' character, because you ran over my son and killed him, in tradition in this country is you come over with me to the funeral so we can bury the guy's son. So straight away, Ray finds is kind of like, well, I'm not going to do that. He's like this wealthy kind of guy. Jessica Chastain's kind of like this trophy wife. And immediately he's like, right, well, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do it then. Let's just get this over and done with. And Jessica Chastain's character, in the meantime, is hanging around in this house that turns into pretty much like an orgy party at this point, and kind of like just very sexualized or fill your wildest desires or whatever it is. And in this meantime, well, Ralph finds his character is absolutely like desolate, isolate, like doesn't talk to anyone whatsoever, and he's worried that he's going to die because he's killed this person's son. Jessica Chastain is off kind of like slutting herself out to men in this kind of house, and in this meantime she doesn't care about her husband whatsoever. She has like one phone call interaction with him and like that's it. So I'm like, well, she's his wife, she should really be worried about this guy, and she just isn't worried about him pretty much whatsoever, while he is absolutely sweating buckets every day, worried for the sake of his life. She's too busy trying to get with this much younger guy, and there's even one dialogue line in this movie where Jessica Chastain says herself, us women, we should be more slutty. And I'm just like, how did someone pay her to say that line? Yeah, I just don't believe that. Like, Jessica Chastain's one of her kind of personality is like very like activism and like feministic kind of such. So not in a bad thing, that's her own beliefs. But I was like, why is she saying this line of dialogue? I know it's a movie, but surely she read the script before accepting it, or did she just take this movie for a holiday? I really don't know at this point. So in this whole time, you want to try to get around Ralph Fiennes' character, who's in this awful situation, but then they're really just cutting back to this house scene far too often, where everyone's just kind of like just sleeping with each other and having this party or such, or trying to have this like sex party or whatever they're doing. And it's just like one side of this movie wants to be really serious with this kind of whole arc with this boy dying, and the other side of this is just like, oh yeah, let's just show you guys some nudity, let's just show you guys what can happen if you come to this house in Morocco. And then this movie, guys, is just bad. This is just flat out absolutely terrible. I left the movie theater after watching this one really annoyed. I was like, what have I just experienced? I came home and I told my partner, I was like, I've just seen one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, and it just so happened to come out in 2022. Yeah, this movie, like the acting, apart from Ray Fiennes, like he gives a good enough performance to, he's trying his best, but everyone else is bad. Matt Smith's terrible here. Jessica Chastain's character is not likable at all, and I know she's maybe trying to do this messaging of like the whole premise of maybe this side plot with her is to try to become like this strong, independent woman as such, and not be kind of classed as like a trophy wife or anything like that. And if that was generally the case, I can get that for sure, and can respect that they're maybe trying to do that, but they do it in such a bad way, and they try to do some kind of like fancy opening and end titles here, and it just doesn't work whatsoever. The movie's just really badly directed. The dialogue is absolutely terrible. I've seen better dialogue in an asylum movie, and that goes to say something. And that is going to wrap up my rant on The Forgiven, guys. Absolutely terrible. Half a star out of 5. Definitely cannot recommend that movie at all. And please, one time I'm going to ask you guys, don't even check out the movie. I guess if you really want to, go do it, but I really can't recommend it. So that is my top 10 worst movies of 2022. Are any of these movies on your list? If they are, or if they're in the exact same order or different, I'll leave any comments down below so we can continue the discussion down there about our worst movies of this year. Thank you for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Also, if you're unaware, I do have a Patreon. Yeah, over on my Patreon, I have a couple of tiers you can select from, which starts from £2 per month. And these tiers do include like early videos, my release schedules, say what goes onto the channel. You can actually pick out movies for me to review. There's so much stuff to find out about my Patreon. The link is down below in the description box if you want to check out more. And I want to give a big special thank you to all my awesome Patreons who help support the channel. And until the next time that I see you, I'll be seeing you later.